Hello, everyone. My guest today is Susan Winograd. She's a licensed physical therapist, founder of Pelvicore Rehab and Wellness, located in Boca Raton, Florida. She earned her master's degree in physical therapy from College of Staten Island, has over 22 years of clinical experience. Her practice specializes in pelvic health and wellness, addressing issues such as urinary, bowel, bladder, and sexual dysfunctions. In addition to her clinical work, Susan has been featured in publications like Boca Raton's Wonder Women, highlighting her dedication to pelvic health. She also shares educational content on pelvic health and wellness in her YouTube channel called Pelvic Core. Welcome to the show, Susan. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. Dimitri, I must have given you a really old bio because at this point I have 30 years of clinical experience. So I guess I have to update my bio. Business number one is update your bio constantly.
Absolutely. So 30 years. Wow. Great. So tell us, Susan, you're in Boca Raton, and when did you decide to become physical therapist?
So, yeah, go ahead.
And then, and what kind of led you to opening your clinic?
Yeah. So I have been blessed, honestly, for some reason I always knew that I wanted to be a physical therapist. And I think it was meant to be, I would say. So my dad was a physician when I was growing up, and he was a doctor in the 80s. And what he used to do on Sundays back then, you have to do rounds in the hospital. We lived on Staten Island. So we would go to Staten Island Hospital and do rounds there, and I'd go with him. And in the 1980s, you could actually take your child to the hospital with you to do rounds, drop them off at the physical therapy department, and go about and do your rounds and come and pick up your child when you're done. So I kind of became their little mascot. I watched what they were doing, and I think at a very young age appreciated the impact that PTs had on people's lives. So it kind of was a transition for me from just following my dad around, seeing what he was doing, and then just knowing that's what I wanted to do. So when I graduated school, did acute care. I worked in Robert Wood Johnson Hospital, like most people do. And then honestly, the evolution of my career was really a reflection of where I was at in my life. So, when I was having my children, I'm blessed to have four amazing children. I did home care. And it gave me the flexibility to be home when my children left to school and be home when they came back home from school. They didn't even know that I worked. So I did that for several years. And as my kids got older, I was kind of feeling itchy to do something more. So I actually went out on my own. At that point, I lived in New Jersey. I had kids. And I was very embedded in the New Jersey healthcare community because I had been doing home care for so long. So I opened up a business called Home Advantage Rehab, where I did concierge outpatient physical therapy in people's homes. So basically Medicare Part B. And it was great. I loved it. I lived in a small town in New Jersey, and I had a lot of patients that were clustered together. Very often, I had several patients in one building. And when my oldest daughter was entering high school, my husband and I decided to completely uproot our lives. My husband is born and raised in South Florida, and we decided to pick up our family and move to South Florida. So I basically closed down Home Advantage Rehab in New York and reopened in Florida. And the culture in Florida for healthcare was very, very different, and the topography is very different. So my demographic really transitioned to a much older population. And what I was noticing when I moved here was that I was getting a lot of referrals for people who had fallen. And it was presumed that it was because of balance issues. And what I was discovering was that it wasn't because of balance issues. These people were falling because they were running to the bathroom and couldn't make it. And that kind of really got me interested in pelvic health. And I started learning about it and doing bowel and bladder retraining within the context of that company. And I just fell in love with it. And at a certain point, I said, you know what, this is my mission. This is my purpose. This is my calling. So I shut down Home Advantage Rehab 10 years ago. and I launched Pelvicore Rehab, and the rest is history. I've had my own clinic since that time, and we've evolved and grown, and it truly has become my purpose.
Wow, very interesting. That's really cool. So Home Advantage, I believe there's a similar company in New York. You didn't sell the company, right? You're closed.
I didn't sell the company. Probably because our move was so sudden, but in my thought process was I'll just shut down my LLC there and open up in Florida, which is what I did.
Got it. Okay, very good. So you started the company back in sorry, when you moved to Florida, you started the same company, and then how long were you in business for running Home Advantage in Florida before you started Pelvic Floor Health?
Not long, about a year. I was in Florida for about a year, and the culture, the healthcare climate in Florida is very, very different than it was in New York. So in New York, I was a Medicare provider. And I was just honestly getting really, really burnt out. Medicare was cutting our costs. They were increasing our paperwork. And I just felt like I couldn't provide the kind of treatment that I wanted. It became very increasingly frustrating for me. So opening Pelvicore was an opportunity for me to open a cash-based business, and that's what I did. Now Pelvicore for the last 10 years has been cash-based. We don't have a relationship with Medicare, and we don't participate with any insurance companies.
Actually, that was one of my questions. So thank you for answering those. Uh, Speaking of cash base, so do you offer like a 1500 form? Do you offer any invoices for patients to get reimbursed from the insurances? What is your model like?
Offer super bill. So our EMR is set up to generate super bills, so they get all of the codes and everything that they need, but we do not communicate with insurance companies. And that was a very intentional decision I made. Some cash-based companies will submit for clients. I didn't want to have any, I really wanted my model to be patient-centric and not have to deal with the bureaucracy. But we do give a super bill to our clients and make them very well aware that they need to know what their out-of-network benefits are. And many of our clients do get reimbursed.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Very, very interesting. And was that always the model, or initially you actually accepted Medicare?
Or Home Advantage Rehab, I accepted Medicare. As soon as I shifted, and that's why I completely separated myself from my other business. I opened another NPI. I had a new therapy. I really, really wanted to separate myself from the insurance industry because if I was going to reinvent myself after 20 years of practice, I was intent on providing the kind of care that I was driving, not what an insurance company was driving.
Well, that makes total sense, and I commend you for it. It's very difficult to run a cash-based practice, right? Are you currently treating patients 4 or 5 days a week? What is your
So
volume?
the beauty, so what is my volume?
Like in terms of days in the week.
My practice, we're 3 pelvic health therapists. We all have decades of experience. So the other 2 therapists, I have one therapist that's here 4 days a week. I have another therapist that's here 2 days a week. I'm here 5 days a week, but I'm kind of stepping away from the treatment room, and we're really I'm dedicating myself more to teaching and education. Um, and I'm really immersing myself in that space so I could work on the business and not in the business all the time. We also just starting offering hormone replacement therapy. So we have a nurse practitioner in our practice.
Mm.
And we have an incredible massage therapist who works with us on plan of cares. She worked with professional NBA and NFL players. So our team has certainly grown over the years. And I think people are truly finding the value in investing themselves these days. It's no secret that the healthcare industry is difficult to navigate. A lot of times people don't get the care they deserve. And I think more and more people are finding that they're willing to invest their financial dollars into their health.
Absolutely, and I've heard that about South Florida region because there are less options for in-network providers, especially in this particular field. Uh, Therefore, it all depends on the neighborhood, right? Or on the demographic population being servicing. Some areas, I mean, Staten Island, I think it would be very difficult, for instance, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm in Brooklyn, so I'm familiar with Staten Island as well. So, like,
Right.
certain parts of Brooklyn, and my personal story, I have stake in the outpatient clinic, right, in Bensonhurst. And it would try, yeah, we try to add pelvic floor, oh, right, in Bensonhurst through cash base, and it didn't work out because a lot of people don't understand what pelvic floor does, right? A lot of immigrants, they don't understand it. Doctors, a lot of doctors don't understand what it is. So it's a lot of education for doctors to explain what pelvic health does for the patient, right? How it changes quality of life. So that, again, for me, it's a very interesting topic, and interesting how different regions in the country able to offer this, either in network, which actually I haven't even heard. Most people do offer it as a cash based service. So really cool.
I will tell you that it is difficult here too, and there are, I'm not the only one in South Florida. There are in-network clinics that provide pelvic health and wellness. Doctors do not take the time mostly to refer to us. We have a couple of amazing doctors that we collaborate with that do see the value, but most of the time doctors don't take the time, or they don't know the value. It's really us driving the education and the messaging. We're constantly um, doing workshops and events and really educating the community that this is something that everybody needs and everybody should be proactive about. I think it's more challenging in some areas, but I think it is challenging everywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would like to talk more about uh, workshops you guys have, marketing. I just want to go over a few other things first. So you started 10 years ago, right? Can you tell us about the space you had? Was it a mobile type of clinic initially, or was it a brick and mortar right away? And when was your first hire since you started?
So that those are great questions. So I wouldn't say I am the best example of how to plan reinventing yourself. What happened with me was like really I was not the primary care provider. My husband, I had the luxury of reinventing myself. We do need the second income, but I wouldn't say we're dependent on it. So when I decided I wanted to open Pelvicore and launch Pelvicore, I didn't have like a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 15-year plan. I was like, I came home one day and I looked at my husband. I'm like, I'm reinventing myself. I don't know what's going to happen. In retrospect, it wasn't the smartest plan. Thank God it worked out. So I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I aligned myself with first a physician who did, all he did was prostate cancer. So I actually started my pelvic health and wellness career only treating men for a year, which is the reverse of how most people get into the field. I ended up developing a pre-prostate surgery program for him, and I treated all of his pelvic patients through Pelvicore. I never worked for him. I launched Pelvicore and then I worked with him. And then a year into it, I was really feeling like I was missing out. I wanted to treat women. I wanted to do pregnancy and postpartum. However, and I treated in his space. For me, I did not feel like I wanted to run a pelvic health and wellness clinic mobile. I just didn't feel comfortable. I do internal vaginal work. I do internal rectal work. I'm not saying that there's something wrong with it, but for me, it wasn't the model that I wanted for many reasons. It's a hard model to do in someone's home. I also wanted to create a space where people would be able to come in and really just focus on their healing. And that could be very, very hard to do in your own home. So my first step was that I rented one room from a physiatrist. He had an empty room and I rented that one room from him, and I was the PT, I was the admin, I was the accountant. I wore every hat in the company, and I didn't know how it was going to pan out. Within a year, I had hired another full-time PT. And then, yes, and then I joined a business group. I joined Paul Goff's business group. It's a business coaching group meant for cash-based businesses. And I remember my first call with my coach, And he's like, you don't have a front desk person. I'm like, oh, no, no, no. No one's going to convert people but me. I need to be the one answering the phones. And he said, that's the biggest mistake small business owners make. So at that point, I hired a patient care coordinator. And I rented 2 rooms in that physiatry clinic, and then the following year, I came into my own space. We have 3 therapists, a massage therapist, and a nurse practitioner. I'm sorry. We have 4 treatment rooms and an admin room now. So I was blessed that I was able to sort of grow organically, but I would recommend that people have more of a plan than I did.
Wow, really cool. Thank you for sharing this. And Susan, so, and then just on this topic, so you're renting space from this doctor. Was that how you got most of your referrals once you rented room from the physiatrist, or your referral sources have completely changed?
No, I never got most of my referrals from physicians. Even the physiatrist, maybe I got a couple, but doctors these days, and I have many heated conversations about this with my husband because he's a physician, but doctors these days have to see more patients in less time for less money. So doctors are not getting the time to sit in a room and tell people about pelvic health and wellness. I would say a majority of my caseload came from word of mouth. I very, very quickly distinguished myself in the field as not just doing pelvic PT. Our approach to PT is really full body. I quickly integrated a complete biopsychosocial approach where we talk about depression, anxiety, stress, catastrophization, central sensitization, somatosensory dysregulation. It's really a mind body approach, a nervous system body approach. And people very quickly started hearing that this is not just pelvic health. I mean, they're talking about the gut, they're talking about, sleep, they're talking about nutrition. People would come to us with pelvic pain, and there were times that we were treating their ribs. So I was able to distinguish myself in a way where we became known as finding the driver of what's going on. Let's find the driver. And I was able to do that because I found the greatest mentors. I was I literally, Dimitri, when I decided that this was my calling, I ravenously learned and I ravenously took courses. And because of that, I was able to acquire mentors who really changed the framework of how I look at the body. And that's the biggest piece of advice that I would give people is to always have a mentor and to always be a mentor. Um, so just getting back to your question, our number one referral system is word of mouth. We do Google Ads. Google Ads is really good for us.
Okay. And on this topic, was it always the same way since you started, or were you relying more on certain referral sources in the beginning and then now it's more in Google Ads, or it's been, and
Yeah, it's been like this from the beginning, word of mouth, Google Ads. But when I first started, I spoke everywhere. Anyone that would have me, I gave a workshop for free. I spoke in birth houses. I spoke in spa studio, yoga studios. I spoke for mom groups. I spoke for menopause groups. Literally anywhere that would let me speak, I had a workshop for every topic, and that was an amazing conversion for me. So that was huge. Was that I was able to get not only did I get to know the community and the business owners, that's how my word of mouth took traction also.
okay, that's really cool. That's really cool. And do you track your referrals with at this stage of your business and the number of referrals per month, for instance? Where they're coming from, etc.
Yeah, so that's another thing that I would recommend. We track everything, everything.
Love it. I love.
Where our referrals are coming from, how many referrals we get, how many referrals convert, how many, what's the life of every patient, how many people come to our events, how many people can literally we track every detail. We have a big spreadsheet, and every week I have a front cap meeting, meaning on first thing Monday morning to talk about what our goals for the week are. And we have an end cap meeting to discuss how we actually did that week.
Wow, really cool. I mean, a lot of people don't track things, and I really like the fact that you guys are doing it. I think it's extremely important to scale, right? And to see where most of your patients are coming from. And if you find out they're coming more from, let's say, Google Ads, then you double down on Google Ads. If they're coming more from the physicians, obviously, probably a better idea to then target more physicians instead, right? Uh,
Really good for me also. I've had some conversions from YouTube. We have a very robust YouTube channel called Pelvicore Plus.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I actually checked it out. It's really interesting. Great topics. Susan, so balancing patient care and business growth, right? So how do you manage both? I know you mentioned that you try to step away from, from clinical care and more into, running your practice. So how do you split it now? Do you treat a couple of days a week and the rest of the days you're managing the business, or you stop treating completely?
No, that's a great question. They honestly think that's the most challenging thing for me to balance. I do treat. I feel like that is my love. That is my passion. I never not want to treat. So I would say I consistently try to treat 3 days a week, but not full days. Uh, I like tomorrow I have 4 patients, and I try to keep it to 4. I really try, and then I try to have 2 days a week where I'm just locked in doing business stuff. But I have still I'm doing tons of meetings with people. I have several meetings a week, just meeting people in the community. So yeah, I will always treat, but right now I'm really trying to carve out time and also block schedule. I think block scheduling is really important. Like Wednesdays and Fridays are my business development days. Usually half day Monday is treating and meetings, Tuesday's a treat day. So I feel like block scheduling is really important so you know exactly what your week looks like and what's happening every week during that time.
Okay, very good. And then when you talk about community outreach, right? So are these presentations and workshops that you're participating in, or it's something else?
So, and in all of the above, yesterday we sponsored Pelvicore Rehab and Wellness, sponsored Getting Ahead of Alzheimer's event. So we had a table at that event, and I made several great connections with other sponsors that were there. So we do sponsorships, we do workshops, and my patients are the best connectors for me. Every patient I have will say, I have the best massage therapist. I have the best orthopedic PT. I have the best yoga instructor. And I'll say, great, can I have their contact information? And that's really how I meet people in the community. So this morning at 11 a.m., I had a meeting with a yoga instructor who does sound healing and mindset coaching. And she's actually a business partner of another colleague of mine. And there was so much alignment with us. So my motto is be anywhere you can and talk to anybody who's willing to talk to you. And I really do that.
Okay, very good. And you mentioned like ortho PT. Do you get referrals from other physical therapists? Is that one of your?
Yes. So sometimes, mostly other orthopedic PTs that I've already aligned myself with. So, for example, there's an incredible clinic here called Barwis. They treat professional athletes, and I met the director. Her name is Kelly. She at one point I was podcasting, and now we're a great referral source for each other. So there are a few orthopedic clinics where we've developed, a relationship, a collaborative relationship. And it's all about, I won't just refer anywhere. I have to have a personal connection with them. Anybody that I offer as a resource, I have to be sure that it's a quality resource. So I make sure that anybody that I recommend to anybody is somebody that I've met with, spoken to, and know everything about.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, that makes total sense. And uh, in terms of referrals, again, I want to talk about referrals a little bit. So you're mentioning that you mentioned before that you don't get many referrals from physicians, but the ones you do get from physicians, are these mostly OBGYN physicians or it's a different specialty?
Big question. So as Pelvicore, and the truth is, I'm, it is our referral base from physicians is growing. And I think that's because Pelvicore Rehab and Wellness, our reputation is growing. So we have a few OBGYNs that refer to us. We have a physiatry practice that only pelvic health, pelvic rehabilitation um, center. They are a physiatry practice that only does pelvic health, and we work with them a ton. They
Never heard of a physiatry practice like that. It's really interesting.
Yes, yes, pelvic rehabilitation. Dr. Allison Shrikandi owns it, and Dr. Sandra Sandu is the doctor that works in South Florida. Marjorie Sung we also work very closely with. They only do pelvic. So with that practice, we refer to them a lot and they refer to us a lot. We're also getting more and more referrals from GI doctors whose patients have constipation or pelvic floor dyssynergia. So it's growing. I think it's really, really important to create credibility out there.
Absolutely. Yes.
As we become more well known, um, I would say doctors are handing out our cards a bit more, although that's not our biggest referral source by far.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
And Susan, I would like to touch on reports again. If can you name the top three reports that you run on a monthly basis for your practice?
We have our EMR is we use Intake Q. But through the coaching practice that I went through, which was Paul Goff's business group, he helped me set up a document called Cockpit. And it's a great name because it's the driver's seat, right? And it literally it tracks everything from your income to what your arrival rate of patients is, what's your cancellation rate, where did your leads come from, um, you know, how many patients you saw that month. So when I say we track everything, we track every report weekly, and then monthly is a recap of all those numbers from the last 30 days.
Impressive. I like it. I like it because a lot of clinicians I talk to that are, one location, once they hit three locations, I see more robust reports being run. But for smaller practice owners, right, 1 to 2 locations, a lot of them run very few reports. And I think it's extremely important for those listeners that are starting a clinic or scaling their clinic to confidently run reports. The fact you run them weekly, that's really commendable.
Well, I think it's all about having a system. Like we have a great system to track numbers. So it's honestly, and everything is automated. So it's almost easier to do it weekly because, it's not, it takes my patient care coordinator just a couple of minutes. Okay, how many patients did we have last week? What was our arrival? How many Google reviews? How many Google referrals did we have? And then at the end of the month, it's just a tally of the 4 weeks. So it takes very, very little time, actually, if you have a good system.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would like to point out to our listeners that Susan's clinic has a 5-star rating on her Google reviews. I checked that out earlier. Very impressive, and she has over 200. I mean, I think it's over 200 reviews. I think you have, and it's very difficult to maintain 5-star when you have over 200 reviews. So I applaud you for it.
Thank you. I think that just comes from a shared passion and vision with my entire team. We tend to attract a more complex client. We're usually not their first stop because we are cash based. And our motto is we don't leave any stone unturned. The only guarantee we make to people is that there's nothing we won't try to do to help them.
Cool. Very cool. What is your cancellation rate since you mentioned it?
That's a great question. A couple years ago, it was about 70% arrival rate. And then we implemented a cancellation fee, and now we're at 95% arrival rate. And that's a low peak. Usually we're at about 98% arrival rate.
11.5%. That's pretty incredible. Yeah. Average daily tracking is what, 10%? But for average among in-network clinics and out-of-network clinics. But I agree with you. Having like a cancellation fee definitely changes the game.
It literally took us from about 75 to 80% to like the lowest is 95%. And that's like not a great week. I feel like people need to have a little skin in the game. I mean, we have our clinic, our model is one-on-one. So if someone doesn't show up or if someone doesn't give us enough time to fill the slot, it's a lost slot for us, and people really need to understand that, and we're very clear about that in our intakes, and our patient care coordinator very clearly articulates that to every client.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's an education, having a therapist
Mhm.
himself or herself mentioning this to the patient, not just the front desk, right? Not just the clinic coordinator, but the therapist talking about these points. I think it's a lot more valuable, and it gets the point across. What do you charge a full treatment rate for cancellation, or it's a discounted rate?
Oh, it's $100 cancellation rate if it's less than 24 hours. If they completely are a no-show, like they just don't show up, then they forfeit the fee.
Okay, got it. Okay, very good.
I mean, that being said, if someone, God forbid, tells me their grandmother died, like, we are very gracious um, for people that we know and love and trust, and they truly have emergencies. But I find that people really know that, we implement our cancellation fee.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the things I hear from some of the clinicians we work with. Oh, I'm afraid to set up a cancellation fee. Then I'll get a bad feedback or a bad review. And, this patient will not come back. So, and that's right. Like changing that mindset, right? Telling them, hey, but if you don't do it, you're going to lose a lot more money down the line.
Yeah,
Right.
and no, it's not. It's I would say even one step further than that, it's not about money. It's about someone valuing your time. Your
Yes.
time is the most valuable thing. I was scared to do it too, and it took me a few years. And the older I got, and the more experience I got, and the more value I knew I was bringing, the more confident I became in saying, this hour could have gone to helping someone else. So I would say it's scary, but feel the fear and do it anyway, because your time is the most valuable thing.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. I think it's going to be important for those clinicians that are scaling their clinic, and then they're afraid to set these these cancellation fees out. All right. Susan, I wanted to talk about like advice that you have for clinicians that are starting out. So what steps are essential in starting and scaling, sustaining a profitable practice?
I would say know what your core values are and know what your mission is and keep your messaging consistent. I feel like your messaging is so important. I feel like the more consistent your messaging is, the more people will know that message is from your clinic. And I would also say just being out there in the community as well, like continuing to talk about what your core values and your mission is. Of course, having the right staff and having systems and processes. I feel like everything, I was late to that game. I'm going to be completely honest about that because I didn't have the best plan coming in. I have to sort of do all those automated processes when all of a sudden 5 years into my business, I'm like, "Oh my god, I really have, like, a sustainable thing going on here that's growing." And I had to sort of catch myself up. It would have been much easier had I had a system and process that was automated from the beginning. So I would say if you wanna scale, that is such an important thing.
I could definitely relate to this. Absolutely. We realize later when you're making your 10th hire is like, oh my God, I have to do the same onboarding. And then I should have probably taken notes, right? And I should have created a protocol instead of redoing things over and over again.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great advice. I couldn't stress it enough. So definitely set up systems, right? Having your SOPs in place, right? Policies, procedures from the get go, and then mission. A lot of clinicians they're starting out like the mission is the last thing they think about is like the first pain point of like how do I get my first 5 patients through the door, right? But having a mission statement, I think it's extremely important before you do anything.
That's know who you're talking to. I feel like it's not about like my first 5 patients. It's like, what am I saying that's going to get that specific person in?
What is going to resonate? Absolutely. Susan, and So one of the issues that a lot of clinicians are finding, right, when they're scaling their practice is hiring, right? Recruitment. What have you found that's been helpful in finding the right talent and keeping them on, right? Increasing the turnover.
So I think for pelvic health and wellness, it's beyond challenging. And I would say God was good to me in terms of helping me find the two most incredible pelvic health therapists. In terms of an off like your office staff and your admin people and your social media people, to have an onboarding, to have an interviewing process. So I no longer bring everybody into the office right away. I have an initial Zoom interview. Do we connect? Do we resonate? Do I even want to meet you in person? Then we have an initial in person meeting, and then we actually go to a third interview process. So we have like a three-step interview process. I have, specific questions that I ask them that might not be like related to their admin work. I want to get a feel of what they're like as a team player, how they problem solve. But hiring is the hardest part of being an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. And when you hire a physical therapist, do you hire them with experience already in pelvic floor? Are you willing to train? What is your motto like?
Yeah, so because my practice is has really evolved into attracting a more complex client, I can only hire someone with pelvic health experience. I'm always willing to mentor them, but they have to come in with a pretty decent degree of knowledge because of who is knocking on our door. So, we do sometimes get simple bowel and bladder patients, but for the most parts, our clients have layers to them and they need someone that's skilled and has like some breadth of knowledge. So in my practice, I hire people that have experience.
Okay. And that makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. Uh, so then a few last questions for today. What are some of the tools that you use day to day? I would say, like I'll give you an example. We like to use Slack, all right, running our company. All right. We use like all Microsoft products. Are there specific tools that you can't live without to run your day to day?
So my EMR, I cannot live without my EMR. We use IntakeQ and it's been absolutely incredible. I've used Slack and Asana. Honestly, what I have found works best in my small practice is we have a virtual sticky note. Where the checklist box and I communicate with different practitioners via this virtual sticky note, and we're able to highlight things that are done and check things off. Um, I've used Asana and Slack, and they're great, but for the scale of my company, it was just like another platform.
Right.
We use Google Drive a lot. We use, Canva a lot for social media stuff. So I would say those things. We're not a huge Slack and Asana type company.
Okay. Okay. And with a virtual sticky note, that's interesting. Is there a name to it or it's actually called virtual?
No, created it. It's a Google document that we create list style. Everybody has virtual sticky note and we make it in checklist form and it's something that we can just throw in jobs and tasks and it's just what works for us.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing that. And Susan, what is a long-term goal for your practice?
That's a great question for someone that didn't have a 5, 10, or 15-year plan. Um, I see Well, we just launched a new initiative in Pelvicore Rehabs called Ask the Experts. And Ask the Experts is basically an educational initiative where we have an expert come to our clinic once a month and they speak on different health related topics. So we had Kelly Maple, who spoke about hormone replacement therapy. We had a clinical sexologist last month. This month, we're having a nutritionist. Another thing that we're doing is we have a spotlight feature where a local company can come and spotlight their business. So I see us more as an educational resource, a community, and honestly, the destination for people that want to get to the core of their healing. I don't have aspirations of opening another clinic. I don't. I In terms of scaling like that, I'm happy where I am. And I'm 52 years old. I want to make my Pelvicore Rehab and Wellness clinic, and I'm probably a control freak, which is why that is also. But I want to scale us in terms of education and quality of care.
Thank you. And I think it's extremely important to know that the goal is not to have, for some clinicians, not to have multiple clinics. As long as you have that one and it's growing and you're happy, that's all that matters. The goal is key.
Was never a goal of mine to have multiple clinics. I didn't want it. I wasn't my goal. I wanted to have the best one location.
Yeah, that's amazing. And thank you, Susan. So for those listeners that maybe missed the beginning of the show, so if you want to find more information on Susan's clinic, it's pelvicorerehab.com, and check out her channel. It's called Pelvic Core. Any information Pelvic Core.
Plus, health court.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Pelvic Core Plus. I apologize. Susan, thank you so much for your time. It was very educational for me and informative. And looking forward to staying in touch and keeping, seeing how the clinic has evolved.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.